This is Brian Swinehart, and you're listening to the Matt Balaker podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the Matt Balaker podcast. I obviously love you because of the guests I bring onto the show. Today's guest is an old friend. He's also a Buckeye who had a tour of duty in the LA comedy scene. He's an actor, comic, producer, and stand-up. He's a fan of storytelling and ethnicities. Please welcome Brian Swinehart to the program. How you doing, Brian?
Matty, good job, dude.
That's the standard intro I give for every guest, Brian, and I just happened to put your name at the end.
Okay, so I'm glad we got a lot of people that are fans of ethnicities. That's great.
Well, yeah, that was one of my first introductions to you, actually through your comedy in Los Angeles. Gosh, probably I want to say 2006.
That would be about right.
Plus or minus, maybe even earlier, but obviously you were good when I first met you, but I knew that wasn't the first time you did stand up, or you weren't like, I mean, we're all young, but we weren't like brand new.
Right.
When did you know you kind of had a bug or an interest for stand up?
Well, when I moved to LA, I moved to LA before I started doing stand up.
Okay.
Yeah. So, when I was in community college in Ohio, I was taking an acting class and I loved it, right? And my teacher had a friend who lived in Pasadena who was a wardrobe lady at Paramount. And she connected me to her, and I ended up living in the wardrobe lady's attic for $300 a month, August for free. And she got me started into the business. And I would do extra jobs on like shows like Roswell and Freaks and Geeks and stuff like that. And then I went to an acting class, and in the acting class, we did a thing where you'd stand in front of the group and you had to make everybody laugh. And I held the record. It was 8 seconds till I got the group to laugh, right? I kind of went to watch. Here was a moment of my life that changed everything. I was at a nightclub in Beverly Hills at the time, and I was talking to these two girls, and this other guy was talking to these two girls, and I offered everybody a piece of gum, and he goes, "Man, you must not be from LA. You share." And, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm from Ohio, and I was real greener than this green screen at the time, right?"
That's adorable. Instead of like offering like cocaine, you're offering gum, and like bless his heart. So obviously you have a good soul. So take us back a little bit. Where in Ohio did you grow up, Brian?
Well, I grew up in my town is called Covington. It's a little north of Dayton. We're 2,000 people, small. We got what's called German Baptist, a lot of German Baptists here, which is basically it's like it's different than Amish, but it's kind of like if you don't know the difference, you'll see them and say, "Oh, they're Amish."
It's Amish adjacent. Do they have like the beards and the hooks because buttons are ostentatious?
Yeah, they got that. They got the hook, the bonnets. And I'll tell you, they're the man. I'd say they're the best people you'll ever meet in your life. Like the aura that these people have is just pure. Like I was at the post office, and this German Baptist lady was standing there, and she just had the best. I don't know, the energy just come off. So because they're not into like a lot of the superficial things that everybody else is into. So
Right. I mean, they're gosh, like probably hundreds of thousands of books where that say like time management or how to focus, how to prioritize, how to be happier. Much of it is like don't scroll all day, limit screen time.
Yeah.
Or you could just follow the lead of the German Baptists in Covington, Ohio.
Yeah, totally, totally. And they get a lot of stuff done. I mean, you should see the woodworking these people do. So
it is meticulous. So how did being like, what was your family like? Were your relatives German Baptist?
No, my mom comes from like a farmer background. She grew up on a farm, and my dad was he grew up. He was 58 when I was born, 60 when my sister was born. So he grew up. He was born in 1921. So he grew up through the Depression, fought in World War II,
Wow.
and then he became like the one of the most prominent attorneys out in this area. So being his son was kind of a thing where small town. Oh, you're Howard's son,
Oh yeah,
right?
don't mess with him, or he'll he can get off any crime. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Like I was never afraid of the cops or and
Good, good.
to this day, people will ask me, "Are you related to?" And I'll say, "Yeah, that was my dad." They don't have to finish the sentence, and he's been dead for like 25 years. And still on like a monthly basis, somebody will ask me, "Oh, they'll hear my last name. Oh, are you related to?" Yeah, that's my dad.
So
So
so you still have to fulfill your father's legacy these years. Like even when they die, folks, they don't really die. I mean, they're always with you.
they don't die, especially like when they were that involved in everything going on. So yeah, and that's always been a hard thing actually to try to fill because I don't know if there's a competitiveness with, but you always want to top your dad, right? You want to catch your dad. You want to be,
Sure.
so that's always been a thing. And I used to watch him prepare for his cases, and he would sit at the table and he would kind of write down his, beginning, opening and closing statements. And
Wow.
it's very interesting how similar that is to the way that a comic works in a lot of
Hmm.
ways. You kind of
It's like, what am I
prepare
going to open with? What am I going to close with?
totally same thing. So,
And, and if you have
yeah.
a bad set, sometimes people end up in jail for life. It's very similar. Lots of parallels.
Yeah, totally. That's the
It's
thing.
like an innocent man is now going to the chair because you messed up your first joke, Brian.
Yeah, totally.
So you kind of witnessed your dad prepare for trials, and you're saying it was similar to acting.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's similar to to acting and stand up. Yeah, because they're putting on a show, and a good attorney. Like my uncle used to say to my dad, he goes, "Man, your dad was the best actor I ever saw." Because
The
sometimes
stuff
you
he
might.
called evidence. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Like, so yeah, you kind of just prepare, and it's an act. And I just used to remember him. He would kind of sit down, write down on that yellow paper what he's going to say, and then he would kind of stand up, work it a little bit, and then he'd sit back down, write again, and and I think that there's a lot of similarities to kind of how a comic might prepare or an actor might prepare.
yeah. And obviously, when you grew up, you don't know any different than what your parents are. I mean, I think that's true for anyone. You just kind of assume what you have is normal. Now that more time has passed, what are you, I guess, particularly grateful for, or what sticks out about your upbringing?
Well, you know what? I think I had it good because uh my both my parents were you know they put in the time, and they also so the thing is that both of my parents went to every single event I ever did. Like my dad missed one of my wrestling matches in 7th grade, and that's only because he was out doing my
And it's the
paper out
one you
for
won't
me.
forget. It's like,
Well, I got pinned, but I literally got pinned, but he was out doing my paper out for me. So it was a Saturday morning, and I'm supposed to do my paper out on the Saturday mornings, but I had the wrestling match. So he's out doing the paper out for me. And other than that, up until I graduated high school, he went to every event. My mom was the same. So I was lucky that I had that type of a thing. And I was also lucky that I grew up in a little town of 2,000 people where you don't see stuff, because I compare that life to my friends who, I have a very good friend that went to Hollywood High School, and
okay.
we lived in the same apartment complex in Los Angeles. And I remember asking, like, man, that's so crazy, because out front of my high school is a cornfield, and out front of his high school is prostitutes, drug dealers, and pimps.
Right.
And I'm like, whoa, right?
I went to the wrong high school.
Yeah, dude, it's like you that Hollywood high school there on Sunset, especially for a period of time, it was real sketch.
It probably
And
is now, but I can only
yeah,
imagine the 90s and like, or yeah.
I remember being there like in the early 2000s, like you were saying, around 2005 or so, and I just remember like it just being, and it's probably bad now. I mean, I haven't been back for 3 years, but I just, even when it's not bad, there's still all that stuff going on.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of takes away a little bit of people's innocence. And I think being naive is a good thing when you're young, right? You
Yeah.
don't want to not be shown stuff is pretty valuable. So, and I'm biased on my hometown because it's where I grew up.
Sure.
So I will always defend it. And but I really think it's a great place. And I think that small towns are good because everybody knows each other. I was the paper boy, so people always knew who I was,
Hmm.
so you're kind of protected in your little town.
Yeah,
Um,
it's harder to get in trouble because Doris from down the street's going to call your mom if you're cutting class early. Um,
yeah,
so obviously your dad is a lawyer, but he kind of had this penchant for performance. I think a lot of trial attorneys do.
yeah.
How about your mom? Did she have an interest in performing arts, or was she
Well,
supportive of you doing it?
so my mom's really who got me involved in everything because so my mom also is a lawyer. Now she didn't go to court as much. She does more other
Like
side wills,
contracts or
estates, stuff like that. But she's really amazing because she was going to law school while pregnant with my sister, and I was two, and
okay.
that was and that was back when she was probably like the only female in the program at that
Yeah.
time. And so, but when we were young, she got us involved. My first job was when I was two. I was in a Pampers commercial. So she took us to the Cincinnati modeling agency when we were kids, and both my sister and I got a lot of jobs as kids.
You had the
Or I
most
don't know if a
dimply
lot, but
elbows. Yeah.
some, some I don't know, but and so we both did things, and then what brought me to California was my sister was second in Ohio in Miss USA Miss Ohio. So she was 1 point away from going to Miss
Almost
USA.
there. Yeah.
Almost that would have been a good time. Come on
Yeah.
now. You
If
know
she
I
had a
would have had
little,
a
oh
good
God, yeah. But runner up ain't bad, swine.
yeah,
So,
so runner ain't not bad, so but she got there was something at the time called World Championships of Performing Arts, which could have been let's get some Midwestern people to pay a
you're
lot
like,
of money to
I'm
join
going
this
to LA
contest.
for yeah, yeah, yeah.
so,
You're like,
so
sister, I'm gonna follow you. I don't like where this is heading.
yeah, so we both signed up for that, and we got to go to LA for the thing, and my mom, shelled out the money or whatever it was, and I did acting there, and at the time I won the boys division for acting, and that kind of
Congrats.
really got me going.
So,
And
how old were you when you won the boys division?
I think I was 19. I was either 18
Okay.
or 19. I
So,
just graduated high school. Well, actually, I was in college already because I had started doing acting in college, and that kind of just came about because I had to choose an elective,
mhm.
and I was like, well, I can't draw very well. I'll do acting, and then I started doing it, and I caught on. I liked it. I'm not saying I'm always great or anything, but I did understand. I mean, I'd seen enough movies and stuff to get an idea of what and I really liked it. And my teacher at the community college was awesome. That's one thing I think is that I think that sometimes these smaller places, okay, they're not ranked up against these bigger places, but it doesn't mean that the teacher you're going to have is any less than a bigger school or something like that. In fact, you kind of
No,
have,
I mean,
right?
yeah, maybe
You
the opposite, honestly.
yeah, I think so because you kind of have an advantage with a smaller situation because you're like you're one of a few people that they're with, and then they really put the time into you, and some of the people they just want to live in a small town too, so it doesn't, I know that when I go like to the doctors and stuff like that around here, it's like compared to being in LA, and it's like an all day event, right? You got to get there, you got to park, you got to go, you got to see somebody you don't know, somebody who doesn't know anything about you. Here you go to doctor or whatever, and it's like they actually already know you're back. Oh yeah, well your dad had diabetes, you better not eat sugar, So
Hmm.
like,
Yeah.
um, and I felt like the same with the school. It's like I never felt like there are some things you have less options in a small town, like we don't have a swimming team or a diving team or as many like maybe plays or stuff like that,
You don't
but
have pimps and prostitutes outside your high schools, and
I'll take that. I'll take that, right? It's like totally. That's good.
I'll keep it in. But you're talking about the benefit. Your doctors know your family history without filling out a form, and
Yeah,
there's some trade offs. But all in all, and I like what you said about school because I went to a very big like research college or university, and it
Mhm.
was fine, but like I honestly think some of my best teachers in terms of like getting me to understand something I might have not really been good at naturally were in high school. And I had some really crappy ones too, but it's like this idea that if you go to a expensive school, you'll be smarter. You might have more name recognition, but I don't know. Now that I'm older, I feel pretty strongly like no, like it's someone who's good at research is a very different skill set than someone's good at communicating a foreign topic to students.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're 100% right. Yeah, if you have a name recognized school, you put that on a resume and maybe somebody's like, "Oh, it gives them that thing," but it doesn't necessarily mean that the person learned more,
No,
It's
no, it means their parents might have given to the right donors at the time.
yeah.
Uh, so I'm so you do this acting thing, and when you're about 19 in LA, you end up moving there. You're living with someone, a set designer,
Yeah.
and so you're already doing like some work, which you're already ahead of like 94% of people who moved to LA for acting.
Yeah.
Um, what was your initial impression? Like after you like got there and you kind of felt like moved in, what was your take of the LA scene?
Well, to me, I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, man. So I liked it. I loved going to acting class, and in my acting class, I ended up meeting a guy named BJ Ralph, who ended up being Superman. Uh,
Wow.
Another guy was Garrett Stroman. He'd been in a couple big things at the time, and the three of us became really good buddies, and we were always hanging out. So I was kind of with these guys who were kind of working, and I was getting to hang out with them. And then I made another friend. His name was Kai Evans, and he was a real serious actor, like just
Yeah.
really into it. So
Yeah.
yeah, just into it. He was great, and he's one of those guys that never got famous as an actor, but could have.
Yeah.
There's so many
He had the
stories like
talent.
that. He had the talent. And he loved it. So I kind of got lucky to meet some guys around my age that were really cool and good actors, and I would hang out with them. And then when I got started in stand up, I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and Josh Wolf was at my very first show, and he and I are still friends since then. And I knew Josh from actually that one of the acting classes I went to, and he kind of gave me some pointers. Like I went up there and was telling dad jokes, like literally little dad jokes my
He's
dad
like,
used to
dude,
tell
you're
me.
22.
Yeah,
You
yeah. And
don't have
I'm up
kids.
there telling jokes. My dad told me, he's like, dude, you can't tell people jokes your dad told you. That's not how it works. You got to
Yeah.
write your own jokes. I said, oh, I got to write my own jokes. I can't just, he goes, this is different.
I got this joke book from 1989 collecting dust.
Exactly. Then I was like, so, so I was kind of lucky there. And then I think with stand up, the thing that helped me the most was getting my own room, right? And you had Red
Hmm.
Rock, which I loved going to, and that was just fire. You had it packed every time. And I think that when you have your own show, then you're because see, I break it down to different categories, kind of comedy, somewhat when you're starting off.
Yeah.
And when you having my own room taught me this, that there was a group called that I would call the killers. And those are the guys that can come in and they can just smash a room out, right?
Hmm.
Then you got guys who are running rooms. Now, guys who are running rooms are going to get good at comedy because they're already working on their craft because they're smart enough to put together their own show.
Yeah.
Then you got people there's different names for them. Some guys are bringers, some guys are draws, but they know how to promote a show. They know how to get people to the show. So those are your three most basic group, the three most prominent. You need your killers, you need guys who are running rooms, and you need guys who know how to promote a show.
Hmm.
And then you got the other 80%,
Yeah, or I'd say 99%. It's like,
99%.
yeah. Yeah.
And when you have your own show, this is kind of the annoying group because they're always pulling at you to give them something without
Hmm.
expecting to return anything to the
Hmm.
thing. And that those are the ones that can hurt your show. But that's the majority, and that's mainly who you got to deal with because there's so many people that are looking for something for a free handout,
Right.
and so that's what I learned by having a show and what taught me about the business. And I say, okay, well, I'm gonna have to become all three of those. I'm gonna have to become a killer, which at first when you start a stand-up, you suck. I probably sucked more than most people when I was starting, right? But I was like, hey, I want to get good. One thing about growing up in a little town is that it teaches you how hard you got to work for stuff. So I already
Hmm.
had that being on the wrestling team, and I used to get sucked. It was wrestling. I said, okay, I'm gonna have to work. It's gonna come, but and then running rooms. I don't know what it was, but I kind of always had luck with that. I still do. I have like a way to get people in, and
You have
I'm
that charisma. Yeah.
yeah, there's kind of a producer aspect that I just kind of, even when I was a kid, whenever I would throw a party, everybody would come,
Yeah.
So it's just like that, and that goes hand in hand with getting people to the show. So I felt like if I had my own show every week, that means that every week I got at least one spot, and
Yeah.
I can work really hard on that one spot, and then from that show, I started getting other spots and I started to get better. And then you take your time from being able to do 3 minutes to 5 minutes to 7 minutes, and then 15 minutes feels like 7 minutes used to, and then now 45 minutes feels like 10 minutes used to.
Right. I don't think people appreciate how long it takes to build any sort of decent act.
Right.
And like I remember being like, oh, I've been doing this 5 years. Like I'm some old vet. It's like, you know, I
Yeah.
think 15 is short. I mean, it's like, yeah, there are a few exceptions. Some people are gonna catch lightning in a bottle and be a huge hit, but the good ones, like you said, the crushers, it doesn't happen in years. We're talking decades.
Yeah. Well, and that's one thing I noticed too when I would have my own shows, book rooms, is the killers usually for me at that time, what I considered a killer were usually 10-year comics.
Hmm.
Right, and then the rest would fit into those other groups. And yeah, you would see some 5 year, 4 years. There's some people that are naturals, just like anything. There's
Sure.
there's guys that are just excellent athletes, compared to everybody else sometimes. And the same with comics. There's just some people who, man, they were built for it. So
They were built for it. And I want to like pause briefly because it was three clubs. Was that the
yeah,
one?
three
It was
clubs.
for people who don't remember. It was an awesome show. It had like stadium seating. It was
Yeah,
in like a pretty cool part of Hollywood. Like a lot of Hollywood's a little bit seedy, but that made it more fun. But
yeah,
it was always packed. And I remember because I think I was referred to you, and like I had been running a show, and I think we maybe crossed paths. But it's funny, like there was a little bit of like I was kind of jealous, because like I like yours had started before, and it wasn't like you personally, but it was just like, okay, is he competition? And then someone recommended you, and then you booked me, and it wasn't as if I was like not wanting to be friends. I just didn't know like how you would take it, because like I played sports, so you kind of think it's like I want to be the best,
yeah. You
and
do.
and then like it was a very valuable learning lesson because one, it taught me to be better at producing, and you could not have been nicer. Like honestly, the second I met you, I was like, dude, this guy's awesome. Like there was no Hollywood pretense. And I felt really guilty, Brian, because I was like, why was I like why was I almost feeling like, is it competition, and then I did my set, and then afterwards you were like, oh, I know you run a show. Let me introduce you to a great comic, Ryan Sickler. Come here, Ryan. And like, no, he's a great human being, but like you could have, like a lot of people, you could have like just stayed in your own lane. You were like beyond gracious, like instead of being like a dick, you lend a helping hand, and it was such a valuable lesson for me. And I felt the same way a little bit about Jay Davis because he was like the top producer, and I
Yeah,
did, my goal wasn't to be the best producer, but I just kind of had this competitiveness where I thought like I had to beat the people out there. And like Jay is also a great human being, just like I now wrote an article about him. Like he's someone I look up to.
he's awesome.
I do it, not anything, but I do a lot for him.
Yeah.
And so like, first off, thank you. I
Oh
feel a
yeah.
little embarrassed even admitting it,
No,
but like,
that's cool.
obviously we got pat. But is that part of growing up in a small town? Is that like, what do you think made you like that instead of a Hollywood douchebag?
Well, you know what, man? I loved that show I had so much. It was like my main focus of my life at that time. And I thought, well, it's kind I would say maybe small town, but I would say also a lot that I was a wrestler.
Okay.
So I'm used to doing things by myself, but on a team.
Hmm.
So I looked at it like, okay, I'm gonna build my room, but then I'm gonna get to know the other people in town. And I also knew that my room ain't gonna be successful unless everybody's talking about it in a positive way.
Yeah.
right? So if everybody's like, "Oh, that Swinehart guy, man, he's blah blah, man, he's a dumb hillbilly, blah blah blah," I'm not gonna get my show wrong. But if everybody's
Right.
like, "Oh, dude, if you go to 3 clubs, man, he'll get you on. I mean, he might not get
Mm.
you on this week, but he'll book you, and he gives everybody a chance." And he, and then I've realized, okay, if I connect other people, if I put Sickler on your thing and this and that, then that's not gonna hurt me. It's not like I'm losing any stage
Right.
time. And I figure, well, the more people that I can put in contact with, the better. That makes my resources more,
Yeah.
right? Um, so, but yeah, there is that where there is like that, things like the only thing that I had run into before, and I kind of learned, there is a snake factor in LA, and it's anywhere where you might, maybe you put somebody on something, and then they're trying to get behind you and get something else.
Yeah.
You put them on
Yeah.
the improv maybe, and then they're wanting to do their own, and so and I kind of take that part of Hollywood as, people aren't from here, so it's not like, you have that kind of connection with them. But as far as like the gigs that we all had, those bar gigs and stuff, I thought that, you do want yours to be packed every month. You want all the big comics to come, but to really get that to happen, you got to have everybody kind of involved. And for the most part, you're allowed to have some haters, right?
Sure.
That's okay. There's can be some people that hate on you, and sometimes you're going to get into it with people. Somebody might come and like run your light by 6 minutes, and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
dude, we got to be out of here by 9:30.
Yeah.
So somebody else is going to have a
Get
three
cut.
minute
Yeah.
set because you got greedy.
Yeah.
So, and not comics don't always understand that when they haven't run a room or they haven't been doing it as long. Um, but I just mainly thought of that venue as like, man, this was my opportunity, because up until that point, I was one of the 80% begging for a spot
Sure.
and
Sure.
didn't really deserve it, and nobody really needed to give me a spot. But once I had my own room, I was like, okay. And then it was just a way for me, because there's people I met at 3 clubs back when we started, and I'm gonna give Angela Johnson has always been the nicest person to me, and she always mentions to me 3 clubs. And
Mm-hmm.
I just went to see her show in Columbus, Ohio, and man, I don't know how many people was there, but there was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, packed out. And she always packs her shows out. But I go back to that, and I'm like, man, I met her when she was just starting, but I knew she was going to be famous.
Yeah.
You could tell she had it.
She had it. Yeah.
She had it. And, but I really appreciate the fact that, you know, she made it huge, and to this day she still is nice to me, just because she's a nice person. But also, she always is. I really appreciate you being one of the first guys to put me on stage, Brian. I'm like, man, it's real humbling that people remember that.
That's so encouraging because I think there's a tendency for people when they make it to almost disassociate with people they knew when they weren't famous. And you know, I'm older now, so it doesn't bother me like it used to. But they're by and large, like Sickler is another example,
Yeah.
amazing human being. I think he could do anything and people would like him. And I
Oh,
think
100%.
most comics are that way, but there's a few that I would give regular stage time to. And also, they did me a favor. They were generally good. Where like I have questions or maybe need some assistance and somewhere trying to find out who the booker is. I mean, like I'm
Yes.
not asking him for money. I'm just asking, or like people I was like legitimately friends with. Like you'd come over, we'd like hang out, we'd drink together, whatever. And then it's like they get on TV and like they never return your calls. And it's like
Yes.
I've got a wife and kids, like, obviously I have some bitterness, but I know that's the minority. That's not, but how do you deal with that? Like what's your take on that? Am I just being a bitch? And you can
No,
call me
no,
out.
no, no. There is that definitely, dude. And I've dealt with that, and I've dealt with the backlash too of some people thinking that because I left LA that I'm not in the business anymore. No, I'm in the business bigger. I'm building something else.
Yeah.
And but you know, I, I look at it like this. When you have a comedy show, your own comedy room, it's like having a swimming pool.
Hmm.
And in the summer, everybody wants to be your friend.
Yeah.
They all want to come over, do a cannonball in the pool, pee in the pool, drink a Bud Light in the pool,
Sure.
right? Whatever the heck. But when it's the winter time and you close the pool down, they're not around.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, hey man, I need, now it's snowing. I need help. I need help plowing out my driveway. My car's stuck.
I'm like,
Uh, right. Yeah, but you can't help me. So tough. Boom.
mm-hmm.
So that's what I always compared it to. I was like, man, having a comedy show, having your own comedy night at a club or a bar or a venue, it's like having a swimming pool. Everybody wants to be your friend. They want to jump
Mm-hmm.
in. They want to, they want this and, you know, they're using you, but they don't know they're using you. And you
Right.
don't that they're using you.
And I guess the flip side, Brian, is like you or we're using them. I mean, like having a good comic. I mean, it's annoying when they weren't good at the time, but it's like I remember Brett Erst, another just like sweetheart of a human
Killer.
being, would just destroy. Would just like so.
Yeah.
I viewed when he was on my show, he was doing me a favor.
Yes, right.
There was plenty of like newbies, including myself, that it was probably more the opposite. Like I was doing, like it was a big deal for them to have that stage time. So there was a little bit of push and pull, and I think my frustration was on the ones that like weren't anything, like that
Yeah.
then kind of give you the Heisman later. But I'll do some therapy and I'll get over it one
Yeah,
decade.
no, but it is something I think about, dude, because it's like, people that and then they make it and then they kind of you're pushed off to the side, and I do understand that also there's like a pressure on people when they get that because
Yeah,
I've known some people that as they got more famous, their life actually got way more difficult,
I bet.
right?
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
Because more people are kind of they want to jump in their swimming pool now,
Right. And they've got a
right?
lawyers and managers and people like, hey, someone died because they cracked their head open because they jumped off the roof or something.
Yeah,
Don't let anyone in your swimming pool. You'll get sued.
yeah, totally.
Well, I'm curious because like when we started, or at least kind of got in the scene, um, YouTube was a thing, but it wasn't like, not every bad set you had was critiqued.
Mhm.
Um, Twitter was barely a baby. It was kind of dumb, but like, yeah, I get what I'm getting as Brian is like, I think comics had more latitude to fail, and you could
Yeah,
like, but I think more importantly, at least this is something that I'm, pretty passionate about is I think there was more of an acceptance that we're joking and we can say things that are maybe considered hurtful in a certain context, but it's not at all when you're doing
right.
it on the stage. Or there's a little bit of a speakeasy vibe where it's like, okay, we're in like the secret room. Like Three Clubs is a perfect example. Like
Yeah,
we can
spooky.
say stuff we wouldn't say on live TV.
Right.
Like, how do you think? Um, I guess for newer comics, like the craft has changed from call it 2005 till 2023.
Man, you know what? It's interesting. I was just actually talking to my mechanic about this same topic.
Yeah, you
Uh,
got industry of mechanic. Go ahead.
I go in there. He's always asking me a lot of questions, and I think that there like anything, there's good and bad. Like so maybe perhaps if the technology was going more when we were starting, we could have made our clips and made our shorts and kind of boosted our career that way. Especially guys like us who had a weekly show, we could have.
Yeah.
But I think as in general, as the craft is, I think that um, there is too many thought police out there,
Yeah.
right? And it's like you can't. And unfortunately, in my opinion, I think that LA became the worst place for that.
Hmm.
And I was just in New York recently too, and I thought they were still pretty tight as well, and it's these kind of bigger cities that are like that where that's why, man, I'm loving these rural American shows that I'm doing, right? Because
Hmm.
they are open, and not only that, dude, they're open to both sides. So
Sure.
I got my opinions, which are mine, that's lean towards where I lean in. But then I'm easily able to book some comics who think the exact opposite of me, and the crowd goes with both of us.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, where because also the side that I'm kind of on is used to getting picked on, so we're okay with that,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So like, we're used to being called dumb
Yeah.
hillbillies and stuff.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's nothing new. But in these bigger cities, I don't know, there's like this fear of what you can say, and in LA in particular, it became like just absolutely ridiculous. And there was one side that was right and the other
Hmm.
side was wrong. And if you're on that other side, forget about working.
Yep.
And um and it just and the other thing is I think that there is a lot of money in these flyover states.
Hmm.
And I think that if you can work these clubs in the flyover states, I actually think there's more money there than in the city because there's too many comics in the city.
Oh, there's so much competition. Like if you get
Yeah,
a $12 set during the week in LA, like that's you're good, you
you're
know.
good. Yeah, you made $12
You made
where,
12 bucks. Yeah.
so it's, I've noticed too in the more rural market, I guess you would say, there's less gigs, but your stage time is much more.
Right. Like 20 minutes is small.
All these comics out here have 20 minutes. They
Hmm.
might not have that, they might not announce it, but these like guys who have been doing it 3, 4, 5 years, they have a 20-minute set that they can do,
Hmm.
right? I mean, it's not always, it's not going to be killer the whole time, but they have their time because they're used to just getting long sets because they have to fill.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, going back to that, I think that there just became this, and I don't know quite where it happened or what happened, but it went from, the three clubs, you can say anything, you're not going to be recorded, which was nice. And
Yeah,
then,
I like that a lot.
maybe it was the TMZ thing,
Yeah.
maybe it was these companies that wanted to, kind of profit off of other people's mistakes, profit off
Hmm.
of what they deem not good speech,
Right.
what they think. And so there was I do think there was a more freedom. And the other thing that I noticed that happened with technology, which is really hard to overcome, is the attention span.
Yes.
So when I started, dude, texting was rude.
Hmm.
You would not text during a show. It was
Yeah.
rude. It was rude. You're like, man, that person is now you see them fiddling. That's why some of these clubs keep the phones. They want to keep it so the comic can have their own material
Yeah.
and not be used up, but also because it's hard to keep that attention span compared to where it was when, back in 2005, 2006, that
Right.
period.
No, I mean, the attention span's an important one because I can gripe. I mean, I think texting is still rude to do during a show, but one thing I think might need to change, and Andrew Norelli and I were discussing this, is like I think generally comedy shows are too long. And and
Yeah.
and you're probably this way. Like for the most part, I don't really enjoy watching stand up. I mean, there are a few exceptions. Maybe it's Chappelle or Chris Rock. I mean, but like I do enough shows where I'm going to see it regardless. I'm not going to
Yeah.
like go out of my way to like watch someone. But when I do, I'm always like, "God, this is way too long." Like, do they need to be 90 minutes, 2 hours? I mean, like, what's your take on that? Like, what's the right length if there is one?
I'm finding I think 75 minutes
Yeah.
is the right length for a show. It can be an hour and a half depending on who it is. Bar shows, depending where it is, can go 2 hours if it's a crowd that's going in and out,
Yeah.
right? If they got the freedom to kind of walk around and leave. But I think if you hit them at 75 minutes, they're still wanting more, which is the most important.
Bang. Yeah.
And I to your point, I've been to shows and I'll start the comics on stage and then I'll start thinking, oh man, I forgot to do my laundry. And and, and and I call that, and I learned from that. I say, okay, I call that to keep them interested enough that they don't think about their laundry.
Right.
And because you'll see it, and sometimes you'll be on stage and you can see people kind of drifting. And I've learned not to take that personal because I don't know if their mom's in
Hmm.
the hospital,
Right.
if they're going through a tough time at their job, if they've had a full day at work and they're just exhausted. Because comics, we sometimes forget it's not all about us, it's about them.
What?
Yeah, but we think, oh man, it's so and so. Well, they look in the crowd. I've also had it though where I was doing a set and man, this guy was just, and I was like, man, and he kept
Hmm.
drawing my attention because I,
Yeah.
God, this guy, I gotta be prepared after the show, man. He looks serious, And the show in, this guy walking straight to me. I'm like, thump, thump, thump. Hey, that was great. I was like, That was great, dude. You were the one person. I didn't tell him that, but I was like, you were the one I was the most concerned about. But
Does your face know that it was great? Because
totally, totally. So you don't know. We don't know what's going on in their minds, but the shows do kind of get stretched too long, and you got to kind of know. Now we just did one here. I do a monthly show in a town called Springfield, Ohio, and we just did one to end the year with. We had the 12 comics of Christmas, and so that's a lot of comics, 12. But you know what? That ended up being one of the best, most fun shows I've ever done.
Mhm.
And we got a good crowd that comes every month, so they're hip to comedy. And but part of it I think is when you host, you got to know how to handle that too, right? Because there's times to do there's a moment where you got to do time in between the comics to reset the room. And then
Mhm.
there's other times when you got to bring the next comic up right
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
And so there's almost like I think somewhat of an art form to that of knowing, okay, I got to reset the room. The crowd's tired now. Bring them back. This guy just has the momentum of them right here. Don't take the time. Give it to the next guy.
Yeah.
So there's all these things, but I think a 75-minute show is pretty ideal
Mhm.
because, and I think it used to be an hour and a half, but I think that there's been a 15-minute
Yeah. I
reduction
think
in attention span.
it's like there's inflation and then there's reduction with like attention span. And I think, I mean, we can fight it, we can argue about it, that say it should or shouldn't be, but I think sometimes you just got to face reality and say, all right, people, we even TV shows, like they don't have to be a half hour anymore. They don't have to be an hour. I mean,
Right.
things are reprogrammed. And so I guess speaking of reprogramming, you left California, what, 2018 or what?
2020.
Oh, 22.
So
Okay.
yeah, I remember the exact day was May 13th, 2020, because what pushed me over the edge was the governor came on and he said he was keeping the economy closed one day before it was supposed to open.
And it was a,
And I
oh,
was
go ahead.
furious. I was
Yeah.
furious. Well, I was furious because I had been doing Postmates and stuff like that to make money while this was going on.
Uh-huh.
And I really started forming some hardcore beliefs sitting in my car, driving around, jumping in and out with the mask on. And there was a couple moments that just, I was, from the start, I never liked a mask. And
Hmm.
I would go into stores and I tried not to and I nearly gotten like three different fights on three different occasions. So I was like a guy, and I'm sitting there seeing, I'm not seeing anybody pass out. I'm not seeing anybody
Right.
cough. I'm not seeing anybody sneezing. And then I kind of started posing. Then I started causing problems. These other comics, massive amount of LA comics, really started hating on me, and I started hating on them back.
Hmm.
Okay, so then I'm getting out of my car. I'm in Beverly Hills. I'd done like 6 or 7 deliveries that day. I'm like, man, I'm gonna go hang out in Beverly Hills. I jump out of my car. I'm by myself, 75-degree day. I grab my mask and put it on, and I
Hmm.
start walking. I walked about 5 steps. I pulled it back off and said, what the heck did I just do that for? I
Hmm.
had just been programmed.
Hmm.
I had gotten in and out of my car 7 times, putting this thing on and off, which I disagreed with. And now I was doing it voluntarily.
Hmm.
And then my mind switched about the whole thing. It was just a moment in your life where you just, something happens, just boom. And then after that moment, I had an anger in me that was crazy, dude. Like, just, yes, dude. And it was just like, I just felt like, man, what the heck? And then I was on my street. I lived on a street called Beechwood at the time, which was a real nice street. You take it
Hmm.
to the Hollywood sign.
Yeah.
And then these ladies come outside, two olderish ladies. They come out and they're yelling at me to put my mask on. I'm walking my dog. And I say, and I start giving them that. You're not my boss. You're not telling me what to do, this and that. And then they say, oh, yeah, freedom, freedom. You want your freedom. And I sat there and said, these ladies are literally mocking freedom.
Yeah.
I can't live in a place where they're mocking freedom. And then a couple of days later, the governor came on and said you can't go back to work. And then I walked down to my landlord after those events and I said, I'm moving. He says, you can pay me back in a year. I said, if I don't have the money today, I'm not going to have it in a year if I can't work.
Hmm.
So so I threw as much stuff as I could in my little Prius and I took off, drove to Ohio, unloaded my stuff. I then I spent a couple days in Ohio, and then I drove back and got my rest of my stuff, and so I made 2 back and forth trips across the country to get all my stuff. But it was just like, it was just a momentary. As soon as the governor announced that, I walked downstairs and said, I'm leaving.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of a combination of all those things. And, having those old ladies yell at me and mocking, putting their
Yeah.
fist up, oh, freedom, freedom. I'll never forget that. I was like, how are you? You're mocking freedom. You're mocking. And I look at it and I'm like, okay, I could have been right. I could have been wrong. I don't know.
Right.
Things played out the way they did, but I certainly had the option to. I got to live in a place where I can walk my dog outside on a 75-degree day.
Right.
They're not around. These ladies,
Yeah.
they come up, they got closer to me to yell at me, right? If
Right.
you're so afraid. So it was a big thing to me. And the way my whole thinking changed and all this stuff changed. And I had a hard time because I felt like at first, oh, I'm giving up on everything I spent the last 20 years to do.
Mm-hmm.
But then I look at it like, man, God works in mysterious ways, because um now I'm no Bible guy by any means, but my middle name is Joseph.
Okay.
So the story of Joseph is that, his brothers sell him as a slave to the Pharaoh. Then the Pharaoh makes him his right hand man. Then the brothers come back. They're afraid that Joseph's going to kill them because he sold them as a slave, but he's all excited to see them because he wants to give grain back to the brothers so they can bring it back to their dad. And they're
Mm-hmm.
like, "You're not mad at us?" He said, "Hey, if you guys wanted to sell me as a slave, I wanted to become the Pharaoh's right hand man, and now we're going through this big drought, and I can send you this stuff to go back to dad, and this." And then I kind of look at that like all of that stuff that happened was to me my Joseph thing, because my neighbors that I'm very close with, they've helped raise me since I was 2.
Mm-hmm.
And Bob was a Korean War veteran, and he, when my dad died, really stepped up to help me a lot. And the last year of his life was 2021. But I got to see
Mm-hmm.
him every single day.
Wow.
Had I been staying in LA being a douchebag, trying to go for Pizza Hut commercials, I wouldn't have gotten to see him every day, right?
Right.
So, like, I got to see all these things, and then it's kind of like my personal life has gotten better.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say my career is going a different path,
Mm-hmm.
but I look back, my final day in LA was so depressing because I looked at the ceiling as I'm laying on my back May 13th, getting ready to leave. And I'm looking at my ceiling and I'm like, what was it all for? I did all that for what?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, you have LA friends. They're not even there to help you move your stuff down to your car. Right?
Right.
They're LA friends. Oh, you're not running 3 clubs anymore? Well, hey, good luck on that travel back. Drive safe. So, 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 I came back, and then I kind of started going down to Florida to do gigs and stuff. My sister lived down in Florida, and I was like, oh, damn, it's cool. It's like, Miami was like LA was in the early 2000s. It had this vibe. And then I was down there in August of 2021, and I had a great time. And I started writing in my journal, man, I got to go back to Florida. I just knew I was going to meet a girl in Florida, dude.
Oh.
I knew it. I couldn't tell. And I went down there, and sure enough, I met this woman from Honduras. Now we're engaged, bro. So
Congrats.
that wouldn't have happened in LA. And so I
So
mean,
what you're saying is you have Gavin Newsom to thank for your beautiful future bride.
yeah, I got Gavin Newsom to thank.
Is he going to be your best man?
He was trying to destroy me, but he built me up.
Like,
So
after so many emergency acts, yeah, he's like, all right, Swine's out of here. So, well, congratulations. Well, I want to have you back for sure because there's a million topics to discuss. But I'm curious, like, what have you done career-wise that you're most proud of?
oh, that's the movie about Scooby. So Scooby, I don't know. Scooby's my friend. His name's Dennis Willoughby, and he's got Down syndrome. He is the um, and this, by the way, is a project I didn't make any money on, so that's why I even know it's the um. But Nick Novicki, my buddy, you probably know Nick. He's a comedian, and he
Mm-hmm.
runs the Easter Seals Disability Film Festival. And each year they have a contest where you make a movie in a weekend, 48-hour film festival. and your star has a disability. And I did a couple great ones. My other great one I did was on my buddy Wheels, who's in a wheelchair his whole life, and we made a real good one about him. And then we made one with Scooby, and Scooby's the hero of my town. He's got Down syndrome. He goes to every sporting event. Everybody knows him. Everybody loves him. I've known him since I was 7 years old. And uh, we made a short film about him. We've done several projects about him, and to me, that's the best thing I ever did, because I took those skills that we learned out in California and was able to apply them here to our town, and everybody in the town liked it, and we got to send Scooby to Hollywood. We did a GoFundMe, and people sent Scooby to Hollywood to walk the red carpet for the award. He got nominated for Best Actor, and
Wow.
yeah, he's not even an actor. He was just being himself, but like, so
Well, and now Scooby won't return your calls, so he's definitely made.
yeah, Scoop won't return my
He's like,
calls.
Brian, who? It's like,
So, but so that's my favorite. I mean, that was the thing, and then the other thing, I had a friend named Ishmael Lotz, and he passed away. I don't know, 2021, I think, and but he made a documentary on me called "I Cleaned My Room." And it's when I returned back to wrestling after I hadn't wrestled in 20 years. And I was in a little boat accident, lost my fingertips, and my coach said, "You got to start wrestling again." And I started wrestling again, and Ishmael came and filmed it. And he at the time had stage 4 cancer, 5. He had the worst, stage of cancer, and he came and filmed it all. And he's from Netherlands, so was a really great filmmaker. And he told me that filming me helped him keep his mind off of what he was going through.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so and now he's the only person that I still follow on Instagram, because I want people to go to look at what he did when he was alive, And so what he did for me there was like, I mean, because he filmed it so well, and that coming back, because not only was I coming back from wrestling, I hadn't wrestled since my dad died. So there was a lot of demons that I was
Yeah.
facing. So he filmed that for me, and he was such a great filmmaker. So those two were the most personal, and that's what I liked the most. And neither one of them were a paycheck gig, right? I mean, I've had my paycheck gigs, T-Mobile commercial, what was that TurboTax Super Bowl commercial, right? So you make the money doing that type of stuff, and then you use that money to make what you want to do.
Right.
That is more helpful to society than, selling out to these corporate people, whichever.
I think that is more helpful. And kind of to conclude, what are you most optimistic about, Brian?
Well, I think, I'm most optimistic, I guess, of where I'm at, that I've found this new voice kind of as a performer, and that I'm in a spot now where I've put myself away from the masses. So now I can kind of think clearly and actually more original. And I'm looking at where I'm living, and I'm like, just like the Scooby thing. I mean, these are the type of things that are personal to me, and I can make them, and just kind of honestly, being away from the crowd has me feeling better, because, you don't have to mess with that 80%. Right, but that's one, you there's still some of that, but you can kind of disconnect. So I think too, just being like, and I got my girl that's got my back, so that's going to help me keep my focus. I got my family, and the fact that I kind of restarted, and also optimistic. The thing that I realized, I don't need Hollywood. I don't need what I used to need.
Yeah.
Right. I don't have to feel desperate. Oh man, I hope I get this. I hope I get this. I hope I do this. That hope word is gone, because I don't, whether that, because what I learned too, coming back home, is the rest of the country don't care. I start doing a home remodel job with some brutes, dude. And these guys, the only question they ever cared about, if I ever talked to them about this stuff, their eyes glaze over. They don't care. But yeah, but they would always ask me the same thing. Did you make too much money? I'm like, no, you make more money laying carpet than I made. So
Yeah.
I wasn't averaging $40 an hour, bro.
Yeah.
So $50, whatever you guys are,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it wasn't like the average where they're doing, but so the fact that I'm not so needy on the business as I used to be has me optimistic. And just like, I got a whole new market here that I wasn't even thinking about when I was there. Just like you said, you kind of compete, man. I got to get this spot because, dude, if I don't get the Monday night spot on the
Right.
potluck at the comedy store, then nobody's going to see me, So, like,
That's true.
you know, and so I'm just, I like the way too my material is starting to become so much more personal,
Hmm.
and and just kind of I'm having fun again,
That's great.
I'm having fun again, and I feel now I'm not doing it. I'm not worried about the outcome as much because out here, I'm just having fun again, and I might not be doing the amount of shows or the level of shows or performing with the big people that are out there in LA and stuff that I used to, but I'm having fun, and I got three monthly shows out here that I just love to do, and I love the people that come to it, and they're so happy to have this. It's not
Hmm.
like I kind of felt in LA a lot of times, man. It's like, yeah, you were good, but you're not Dave Chappelle,
Right. Right.
So
Yeah. It's like, okay.
it's like, well, no, it doesn't. Okay, I know that. Like,
But thanks for letting me know. Appreciate it.
yeah,
How was your free show, sir?
yeah, totally, totally. How was your free show?
Well, where can people learn more about you, what you're up to?
Well, I got all my social media is Brian Swinehart, just my name. I got a website, Brian Comedian, which I'm kind of still always updating this and that, and just um and my email is the letter BTHECOMEDY at Gmail, be the comedy at Gmail. So if you want to send me a message there, that's a good way too, because I always look at my emails. And but yeah, I'm on all the social media, and I'm rebuilding it because I kind of had a little problem with YouTube there for a minute, and then I deactivated my social media for a year, and then I kind of stopped following everybody. Nothing personal to anybody. I just didn't want to. I got, one time when all this stuff was going on in 2020, I was arguing with somebody on Instagram, and then I was talking to my mom, and my mom told me, "I thought you told me you're a writer." I said, "Well, I am a writer, Mom." "Well, it sounds like you're some guy who gets on Instagram and fights all day."
Oh, atta girl, mom. Put you in your place.
Touche, Mom. You
Smart,
win.
smart, smart. Well, you guys, we'll put his social media links in the show description. Wherever you are in America or the world, check out Brian Swinehart, and please do me a favor and come back on the show. You're welcome anytime.
Oh, dude, I had a blast. Thank you, man. That time flew by, man. I just flew by. I hope I didn't talk too long, but I loved it, man.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Matt Balaker podcast. To learn more, please check out mattbalaker.com and encourage your friends to like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate it.